Okay, thanks, Jenny, for introducing me. As Jenny said, I'm the program leader for these two programs, MSc Big Data Technologies and MSc Computer Science in Glasgow. On the Glasgow campus, these programs also run, uh, are also available on our London campus. There is a program leader for each of those based in London, but I'm going to cover uh, both of those from a Glasgow and London point of view, although I'll probably be focusing a little bit more on Glasgow because that's where I'm based in terms of the experience of living and studying here. So, um, give you an idea of what to expect if I can find the way to move the slides on. Yeah. So, assuming that you've joined this webinar because you are interested in one of these programs or have applied for or hold an offer for one of these programs, and I'm not going to say too much about the content of the programs because you probably looked carefully at that to get to this point. So I just want to give you a feel for what to expect should you take up your offer or accept an offer, and come and join us for the next running of these programs. So I'll talk about what the academic year looks like at GCU, what to expect from the teaching and the assessment of your learning here, how we support you and the staff in Glasgow and in London, a bit about accreditation of the programs, um, the sort of careers that these programs will prepare you for, particularly the Big Data Technologies program, and just a little bit about what I think a Glasgow is like and what our students like about Glasgow when they come and study here. So the academic year in Glasgow and in London is split into three roughly equal length trimesters, which are A, B, and C. A is September to December. B is January to April. Those are the trimesters in which we run the modules, the top modules for the program, for both of the programs. And then in trimester C, which is over the summer here, that's normally used for the dissertation, which follows on from the top modules, and any resets that students may have from the modules in the other trimesters. Now that's mostly what we do. I think London is offering a slight variation, which they teach some modules and for students starting in trimester C in May. But apart from that, that's the structure that we follow. We have start points in A and B and in Glasgow, and the order that you do these things depends on when you start. But basically, we have that 2 trimesters worth of top modules, and then another trimester in which you're doing the dissertation, and that's you're focusing entirely on the dissertation at that point. I said I wouldn't say a great deal about the content of the program, but I'll just put up a couple of slides showing the modules and how they're split across those trimesters for each of the programs. So for Big Data Technologies, if you're starting in September, this is the set of modules that you'll be doing to start with, and then after into the new year, you would be doing the second set of modules. I'm not going to talk through those, but I'll show you the computer science program, which shares 1 or 2 modules with the big data technologies program. There's a few modules like data visualization that appear on both programs, but the data technologies one is much more specialized in terms of data. If you do have questions about the content, then do put those in the chat, and I'll deal with questions at the end of my short presentation. So, teaching. What does your week look like, or what does the teaching look like in on both the programs? It looks very similar on both programs. Each module has lectures, and typically that'll be 1 hour per week per module. So if you're doing 4 modules, then 4 hours of your week will be spent on lectures. There's a mixture there. Some of those lectures are held entirely on the campus in Paterson or in Glasgow, and the same lectures done by staff on the London campus, and those are, as you'd expect, delivered in lecture theatres or classrooms, depending on the class size. We do have some online lectures. Some modules are a mixture of online and on-campus lectures, maybe an emphasis online. And one of the reasons we do that is that we can deliver the same lectures to Glasgow and London students together. So sometime, whichever campus you're on, you will find yourself in online lecture classes with students from the other campus, and which way we do it depends on the module. It depends on who leads and teaches the module and some other factors. So you will have a blend of a mainly on-campus experience by the time you consider the other parts of the modules, but with some online delivery, and hopefully that's a blend that works well for everyone. The online lectures are delivered within our virtual learning environment, which is called GCU Learn, and will be delivered by a subject expert either from Glasgow or London. We have very much a team of staff across the 2 campuses who are all involved in working with students on both campuses. That's just a screenshot of the environment that you find. This is our GCU Learn environment for not one of the modules on your program. It's just a screenshot. It has a tool called Collaborate Ultra where you find your lecture and you join that, and then it's a online interface. The lecturer will present whatever they're presenting, and is able to interact with the students within that interface. Not unlike the interface that we're working with just now, but this one is embedded within the virtual learning environment, which I'll say a little bit more about in a second. So in addition to lectures, every module has practical or tutorial classes. Most of our modules are very hands-on in terms of practical work and getting experience of the tools and technologies that are relevant to the topics. So typically, for any module, you will have 2 hours per week practical classes, and those are all in person. We have computer labs in Glasgow and in London, and those are all the labs, as I say, are done in person, and those are your opportunities to get hands-on experience of the tools and technologies and get support from the local staff who teach in those labs. I should say that most of what we use in terms of software is free and open source or cloud-based. we make extensive use of Google Cloud Platform, for example, and Amazon Web Services in some cases. And a lot of students find that they're able to set that up on their own computers as well, so that they're able to continue with their work on lab exercises and assessments when they're away from the campus. So I briefly mentioned assessments there. So let's just say a little bit more about how we assess your learning. There are no exams on these programs, on either of these programs. All the assessment of your learning is done by coursework, or in some cases, some kind of practical tests within the lab environment. Most of the courseworks are assignments that you take away and do either in groups or most often individually. So every module has two courseworks, and there'll be a mixture of activities relevant to that module. Practical assignments, as I say, there may be some written reports, there may be some in-class tests, whatever is appropriate for that module. You are allowed to have up to 2 attempts at each assessment. If you don't pass it the first attempt, then you do have a reset opportunity later in the year, which is important to be aware of. And we are aware that sometimes situations happen to all our students. For international students coming to work and study in a new country can sometimes be difficult. We have various mechanisms for supporting and taking some of those circumstances into account, and you'll find out more about that when you get here. So in terms of staff, as I mentioned at the start, I'm the program leader for both the programs in Glasgow. There are separate program leaders for each of the programs in London, so that each program, whatever program you're on, you will have a program leader who is a point of contact for you for anything to do, any academic matters to do with the program, and will introduce the program to you when you arrive at the induction week. It will basically look after the running of the program and support students and staff on the program. Each module then has a module leader. As I say, we work as a team. For some of the modules, the module leader will be in Glasgow, and will look after that module for students on both campuses. In some cases, the module leader is based in London. We have a larger team in Glasgow than in London, so more of the modules have Glasgow leaders, but the team in London is growing, and that may balance out through time. So the module leader will normally do the lectures. Certainly when the lectures are online, the module leader will deliver those. But in some cases, the module leader will be have the role of designing the content for the module, preparing the content, and that might be delivered by different people depending on which campus you're on. But there's one module leader for every module who is your point of contact for that module, whether you're in Glasgow or London. We also have personal tutors who are a point of contact and support mainly for non-academic matters, and can signpost you to who you need to talk to about whatever issue it is that you're looking for advice about. We have associated with each of the modules, there will be additional members of staff who are lecturers, who are supporting the practical classes, who supervise dissertations, and otherwise support students on academic matters in the programme. We also have many support services for students on both campuses. We have learning development centres who can provide support for academic writing in particular, which is important, really important master's level math support also, but I think academic writing, working on dissertations and so on are the main thing that students find useful, and those are available locally on each of the campuses, and again there is an extensive range of student services on both the campuses supporting you with visa issues, which is a major factor for international students, but also careers, health and well-being, and so on. There's also a student association which is works separately from the academic side of the university, and is an association of students, as the name suggests. So talking about resources, I did mention our virtual learning environment, which is the core system that you interact with for learning. It hosts all of our modules. Each module has an area or an entry in GCU Learn, and that is your resource for that module. It will include it includes the way into the Collaborate online sessions for modules that do have an online component. That's where the module leader will place all module materials and make those available to you, whether that's lecture notes, practical tasks, and other resources, and so on. Also, that we use that system for assessment and feedback. So if you have a coursework assignment, you'll submit it through GCU Learn. You'll get your marks and feedback returned to you through GCU Learn in a number of ways. There's a number of tools that work within that environment that we can use for giving you feedback. It depends on the nature of the assessment and the module. So, as I say, GCU Learn is the core of your learning experience when you're at GCU. Some other systems that will be useful for you and that you might interact with. MS Teams is important. We use that for for individual meetings with students where it's not possible to do that face to face. So, if a student wants to speak to the module leader, and the module leader is on the other campus, then Teams would be the way that we would support that. Other things that you come across might be our timetabling system. Timetables are important, and as I said, we use a number of tools that integrate with the learning environment with GCU Learn. We use Turnitin, for example, and CodeGrade is a tool that we've been using for the last couple of years for feedback on assignments that have a programming or coding aspect. Just a comment about accreditation. So for each of the programs, it's possible to get an MSc. There are exit awards if you for students who don't complete or want to complete the MSc, but the MSc is the main award. All programs in the computing department are either accredited by the British Computer Society or in the process of being accredited. Our policy in the department is that we we run accredited programs. So the Big Data Technologies program is BCS accredited. Computer science is a new program, and the British Computer Society doesn't accredit a program until it has graduates who have completed it. When we get to that point with computer science, we'll seek that accreditation, and that will be retrospective. So that program will also be an accredited program as soon as it's possible to do that. So I've made up this slide mainly related to the Big Data Technologies program, which is a little bit more specialized in computer science. So as you hopefully know, if you've looked at the program information, Big Data Technologies is a specialized master's program for applicants who have previous computing degrees and want to specialize in the data space. The computer science is a program for students who have a good degree in a subject other than a computer science or a closely related subject, and is a little bit broader in terms of the the general subject area of computing, and it is probably prepares you for a wider range of careers. So, software developer, IT specialist, and so on. Here, I have a list of careers that would be quite specific to the Big Data Technologies. In particular, probably data engineer would be the most appropriate career direction, but there's many other job roles that involve working with data scientists, another obvious one, database developer, and so on. The program is very much focused on people that can that understand the technology or developing skills in our students to become people who can take the technologies, understand the technologies, and deliver real-world practical solutions to those, which can involve data science, but focuses on turning data into things that are useful in the real world, and that really is what a data engineer does. There are every organization or every industry or sector uses data, and there are opportunities within Scotland and within London in a diverse range of industries. We have students who are working with organizations in engineering, pharmaceuticals, finance. I'm just reading out the list there, but there's many more: healthcare, retail, security, government, national, local government, and more. We have close relationships with many organizations in all of these sectors, and these are all thriving sectors in Scotland in general, and in Glasgow in particular. The finance industry is particularly strong in Glasgow at the moment. Some major banks and financial organizations have bases in Glasgow and are expanding or have expanded those extensively in recent years. But there are many opportunities in Glasgow. Scotland is not a large country. There's a number of cities, but the two main cities are Glasgow and Edinburgh, and they're very close to each other, and each is a centre for a significant amount of industry, commerce, and government, and many other things. And healthcare is actually a really important area in terms of working with data, and we have very strong contacts with within the healthcare providers. At GCU, we have a very active school of health and life sciences, which many of the people in the computing department work together with on research projects. So so there's opportunities for jobs, there's opportunities to be involved going forward in your career in research in a lot of these areas. And obviously, London is a huge, one of the biggest cities in the world, or one of the most important cities in the world, and there are many opportunities in London also. So I'll say a little bit about Glasgow. I'm not going to say so much about London. London is very well known. Glasgow I know about because I've spent most of my, not all, but most of my life in this area, and including as a student. Not that recently, but I can vouch for the fact that Glasgow is a vibrant city. It has a large student community. It has a number of universities. There are 3 universities, including ourselves, within the city area, and many colleges, and there are other universities not far from Glasgow also. So there are many students in Glasgow, and it's a great city for students to work in or to study in. In terms of what you enjoy alongside your studies, everything. Glasgow has pretty much everything. Is a great nightlife. I was recently asked. My daughter works in the south of England, and somebody asked her. They're down there. Asked her recently, is there any culture in Glasgow? And the answer to that is most definitely yes. Glasgow is a really rich cultural scene with lots of venues for arts and performing arts of all sorts of of all types. Excuse me. So it is very much a city of culture, and as I said, it's very close to Edinburgh, which is also another city with a rich cultural scene. Glasgow is sometimes known as the Deer Green Place because it is a very it has a lot of it's I suppose an industrial or formerly industrial city, but it has lots of open space, parks, just really nice places to be throughout the city, round about the centre. It can just be a very pleasant place to walk around and be in. Public transport, plenty of ways to get around in Glasgow. It has extensive networks of trains and buses. It also has the strangest underground or subway system in the world. I think it's the fourth oldest underground system in the world, and the only one which has never expanded since it was built. It is basically just a circle or 2 circles, one going one way, one going the other, round really useful area of the city. You cannot get lost on the Glasgow Underground because you cannot, even if you miss your stop, you can just stay on and you always come back to the same place because it's a circle. It's different and it's fun, but it's really useful as well. I'm not going to make too many claims about the weather in Glasgow. It depends what you like. It is certainly not boring. You can get all sorts of weather at any time of the year. It does sometimes rain. I would have to warn you about that. But it's certainly there's certainly plenty of variety. What else? The locals are friendly, even if it's not always easy to understand what they say with their Glasgow accent. Sometimes it's something that you get used to after a while. Um, Glasgow is a big city environment. Obviously, it's not a huge city, but it's a substantial city. But it is very close to some really beautiful parts of the country. Scotland is a very beautiful country. Lots of mountains and lakes or lochs, as we call them. You can be out of Glasgow in a in a car or on a bus or a train. You can be out of Glasgow into some really spectacular scenery and hill walking areas and climbing within a very short space of time. And there are many islands off the west coast of Scotland. It's if you want to spend a little bit of time here traveling around the country. It's not a big country. It's easy to get around, but it is quite a spectacular country, I believe. And then finally, talked about the industries that are within the Glasgow area. So there's plenty of opportunities um, for jobs for graduates, but also for many students that get a work while they're studying. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. And as I say, London is well known. You probably can find out quite easily about London, but I don't have the experience of living there, so I'm not going to say too much about that. So that's about all I have to say in general. Hopefully that's been useful to you, but I will happy to answer some questions if there are questions. So I think you can put questions in the chat or Q&A in the Q&A tab. I'll have a look in there and see if there's anything that I haven't covered. Not seeing anything at the moment. So if you do have anything that you want me to follow up on or say more about, then please do feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer. Okay, take your time. Here we have a question. So, how long do admissions decisions take? I'll let Jenny answer that one. Okay, there's a question about career fairs and how often we have those. I'm not sure we specifically have career fairs, but we do have good contacts with many local employers, and they're often invited to give presentations to our students, whether it's undergraduates or postgraduates, and that that's run as a sort of program of employability talks. Often those are online, but occasionally on campus. But as I say, we do have strong strong relationships with a wide range of local employers. Okay, there's a question about uni accommodation. We do have accommodation. I'll maybe let Jenny comment on that. And there is the university does have accommodation very close to the campus. There are many um, private student apartment complexes in the city. A lot of them fairly recently built. As I say, there's a large body of students in Glasgow, and they're well served by for accommodation, whether that's university accommodation or whether it's private. Okay, just there was a question about scholarships, um, and Jenny's answered that in the chat. There are several scholarships available. If you look on the GCU website and just search for scholarships and postgraduate, you'll get some information on that. So a question there, just following up on accommodation, is there accommodation or not? So Jenny's answered that one in the chat, but I'll just keep commenting that. So the university holds a residence on campus, as I mentioned, that's called Caledonian Court, and you can again find information on the website about accommodation. Again, search for well, the address is in the chat if you can see that. Otherwise, it's www.gcu.ac.uk/current students/life on campus/accommodation. And you can find information about Caledonian Court and other support that we offer. A couple of more questions there. there's a question about the data lab. Is the big data course still accredited in the data lab? Yes, for local students, there are some funded places through the data lab. Yeah, so that's still the case. Just on accommodation again, we do have advisors who can help you find private accommodation, and we have accommodation webinars which you'll be invited to attend as offer holders to help you through that process. In terms of your applications, any specific requirements or recommendations to strengthen your application? So Jenny's answered that and pretty much said that what I would say. We're looking for evidence of enthusiasm and passion for the subject that you've applied for, and do make sure that you do know that you've accessed all the information you can about the program content, and that will help you tailor what you say in your application to show why you're appropriate for the program. So yeah, do your research and tell us why you're really motivated to do that particular topic. Just following up on that, Jenny's given a little bit more on common mistakes people make in applications, and I suppose the obvious one is reusing statements from other applications, or taking statements from somewhere else from the internet. You really do want to make sure your application has a statement that is about you and is specific to the program. It's why you want to do this particular program and why you're suitable for that. Okay.